It's time for your weekly Radical Roundup, folks. We've got so many touchdowns for you this week that an orc shaman couldn't count them, and they're some of the more intelligent greenskins out there. This week contains 3 of the 4 times in this entire league's history where a team has scored 4 touchdowns in a single match. Wow! Well, without further ado, let's hop right on in like a goblin hopping on top of a downed opponent. Instantly, we've got an interesting start for this one. The heavens crack open, and with the clap of thunder and a bolt of lightning, and rain begins to pour down on the pitch, just like home. Either way, it causes the usually reliable Saxa Throne to fumble his pickup of the ball on the first turn, but will have a greater impact throughout the game. He picks it up on his next time of asking, but the delay might have been just what the dwarves needed to begin getting the beat on. An amazing punch fells the tree man, and diving tackle gets to work, felling more wood elf players. Up against the wall, though, the elves always have something up their sleeve. Base in the hole, who miraculously isn't injured yet, leaps gallantly over the dwarf line, setting up in a perfect spot to receive the ball from Saxa. Slate Iron Fist ran back to attempt to stop the errant war dancer, but he slipped over. Those dwarven legs just aren't long enough. This gave Base in the Hole his chance to score the first touchdown of the match, possibly on his last appearance for the musicians, as he was finding it difficult to play thanks to the injury he sustained at the hand of the Beastmans earlier this season. From here on, the weather cleared up, and the dwarves took that as a sign to start knocking 7 bells out of the elves. They started the drive with 2 instant injuries, and barely let up from there for the whole game. Oh, what's that I'm hearing? Is it a injury montage? At some point during that mess, the dwarves managed to score the first touchdown, making good use of the carnage to level out the scoreline. They were well on their way to scoring a second, to take the victory away from the elves, despite several leap and other attempts to take the ball away. The sure hands of Thick McRunfast were more than enough to keep the ball away from the elves. That is, until they set up a wonderful 3-man leap play with Harpshooter. Looked like they'd secured a draw, knocking down the aforementioned ball carrier until, astoundingly, Crunch Buttstick managed to grab the ball himself right out of the air, careening into the end zone for what would surely be the touchdown that sealed the match. A surprisingly close game, although it certainly ended badly for the Wood Elves. No points, and a grand total of 4 players that will be missing the next game. Ouch. What? Sorry? The next game starting? Wonderful. This game actually got off to a relatively controlled start. Despite a bonehead from Farg, the ogre, nothing went too awry, but nothing amazingly, either in the early stages of the first half. The humans found it difficult to penetrate the Saurus line, or even outmaneuver it, so the ball stayed relatively still around the halfway line. This may have contributed to the humans' downfall, though. Frustrated, and seeing a chance to open the scoring, Faber made a sprint down the field, but lost his footing just as he entered the end zone. One of the 2 Batra twins was there to clean up and grab the ball, holding it just out of easier range of Baron. This wouldn't stop him, though, as he ran head-on at the skink, only to also slip over. There was still one more chance for the humans, though. If Christian could grab the ball, he could use that cannon of an arm he has to chuck it to someone waiting in the touchdown zone, just before half-time. It wasn't to be, though, as the skink holding the ball was too strong and couldn't be knocked over by a desperate block. A relatively exciting first half, considering the scoreline. The succulent refreshments on sale at the Marienburg Port Dome were more than enough to quell the rowdy crowd, on edge thanks to the lack of scoring during the first half-time break. This meant it was the lizard's turn at a drive, and it looked to be going the same way, with the humans putting together a rather formidable defence. This wouldn't deter the skinks, though. In a miraculous feat of agility, both of them dodged past almost half the human team, dodging 12 punches between the two of them. This put the humans in another desperate position. They couldn't quite run far enough. The story of the game, that. I didn't stop Meinhof from going for the hero play, but it did stop that hero play from working. With the way clear, it was elementary for the skink to put the ball down to go 1-0 up. The humans still had most the half to go in order to score again, and they certainly wouldn't be getting greedy this time. Slowly and methodically working around the Saurus line, helped out by some lucky armor breaks, Christian managed to put the ball down for a second touchdown just as the game was about to end. However, apparently annoyed by the incredibly boring way in which the humans scored that last touchdown. Rightly so, there wasn't even a single highlight for me. The crowd jumped onto the field in a riot. It took a while to clear them out, and the referee wound back the clock to make up for the lost time. Now, both teams suddenly had enough time to grab a second touchdown and take away the game almost as the final whistle blew. The crowd got what they wanted. The game was finally nail-biting. First, one of the Batra twins lunged for the ball but dropped it. Then, Faber and Meinhof, both of whom had messed up earlier in the match, made their own runs for the ball. Meinhof managed to clear the way, but then Faber slipped, landing on top of the ball and scattering it towards the halfway line. The Lizards had the initiative again, and while Batra was able to scoop up the ball this time, they failed to throw it far enough away, and it ended up right next to Meinhof. One last play was on the cards then. Christian, as smooth as ever, walks up, passes the ball to Meinhof, who sprints it down to the end zone. It's practically a done deal. A win is on the card for the humans, and yet somehow he slips again. The crowd goes wild. I've never heard them this excited for the draw. Starting off this match, the fans, drunk from the lovely beer on sale at the Lizards' home stadium, hoped that this wouldn't be a snorefest. Two teams with this much strength and armour can certainly create one, but with bull centaurs and skinks on the field, there's always chance for shenanigans. That being said, they'd be dismayed by the first half. The dwarves took a very hands-off approach to defending, opting to poke at the Saurus cage with the bull centaurs and leave the dwarves to screen. This caused some nail-biting moments for the Lizards, who were sometimes only one dodge or pickup away from losing the ball, but in the end they managed to slowly make their way up the field, outmanoeuvring the slower dwarf team, and getting themselves a free shot up their right-hand side, one that fan favourite Mundy was more than happy to take. There was still technically enough time in the half for the Chaos Dwarves to do something, but it would be close, and one mistake would trip them up. That being said, the ball was picked up cleanly, and the Earl of Slamwich sprinted down the field with it. The crowd roared at what they saw next, though. Crockett Carr, the Croxigor, broke free of the line and blitzed straight at the Earl. A swift dodge from the bull centaur kept him safe, but the hindrance meant that, despite shrugging him off quite cleanly, the Earl didn't have enough time to make it down the pitch. Half-time over, 1-0 to the Lizards, but it'll be kick-off for Coach Saf. The amount of guard the dwarves have now means that, when on the offense, they can actually tussle with the Lizard line, despite their strength difference. This meant that a couple of Saurus were exiled to the sidelines, knocked out by dwarves only in the half, which severely hampered their defence. The Earl found it elementary, therefore, this time of asking, to run straight down their right-hand side of the pitch. The Lizards didn't make the final sprint to the end zone easy, though. Oh, no, no, no. A couple of dodges were needed after failing to swat away a tenacious skink, but fortunately the Earl had trained for this and did them with ease, levelling the score early into the half. This meant that there was more than enough time for either team to steal away the win. Maybe the fans would get the exciting game that they wanted. A dangerous kick into the backfield from Raw meant that the action began as soon as the ball hit the ground. While the Saurus line got to work on the dwarves, the two bull centaurs were sprinting at the measly 3 skinks that were covering the ball. That was more than enough to take it, and it mustn't be a pleasant sight if you're a skink. They had to take a risk, and it came in the form of a pass, not something the stunty skinks are known to be good at. Thankfully for them, this time it worked out, and meant that they could get plenty of distance between them and their own touchdown zone, although they were hardly in a well-defended position. The skink was swiftly dispossessed, but somehow the sure-hooved Earl slipped up on the way over there to pick the ball up afterwards. A stroke of luck for the Lizards, to be sure, as it gave them time to stabilise. Somehow, by this point, 4 of the Saurus and the Croxagore were off the field. Nothing serious. KO'd steadily throughout the match and never standing up again. This meant that there was virtually no hope of the Lizards scoring again. They had to hope they could run the ball around the field enough to deny their opponent. Fortunately, the Skinks are both quick and adept at dodging and sidestepping blows that came their way. Combined, it was just enough to keep the Chaos Dwarves away, although given one more turn they almost certainly would have managed it. The fans got what they wanted, a close and exciting match, despite it being a draw. This was quite possibly the least interesting 4-0 win you'll ever see. It started off incredibly strong for the Halflings, with a perfect defence allowing them to reallocate their trees at will. This proved too much for poor Jim, who, not used to facing opponents as strong as him, immediately got swatted to the floor. The Halflings took advantage of this, fouling him while he was still down and getting a pivotal injury, especially since he couldn't regenerate from this one quickly enough. The very next time of asking, Hot Dog ominously trotted down the field and sacked Tacnit, the Goblin, taking him out of the picture too. A stroke of luck saw Spine Tosser grab the ball, but the damage was done. The tag team of Jim and Tacnit were both off of the pitch, which effectively nullified this Orc squad. From then on, the rest of the half was messy. The Orcs almost made it down the field, but the Black Orc wasn't agile enough to get there, and eventually the ball was scrapped all the way down, with the help of a classic Halfling throw by a tree, to the Orcs' end zone. They almost stabilised, but a veritable swarm of Halflings descended on the back field, ending in the first touchdown. Without enough time to get it back up the field, that rounded out a disappointing first half for the Orcs. Even more disappointing when they got news that Tacnit wouldn't be waking up from that KO anytime soon. The second half opened with a classic Halfling touchdown. Grab the ball, hand it off, throw the Halfling, and sprint down into the touchdown zone. Well worked, and always a delight to see when it goes entirely to plan. By this point, the lack of competent Orcs, or Orcs in general, on the field was certainly being felt. On the kickoffs, the Halflings could just stream into the backfield and easily grab the ball with relatively little resistance. It must be pretty scary as a ball carrier, seeing a veritable army of Halflings descending upon you. This play secured them touchdown number 3, and number 4 was a result of a wonderfully placed deep kick into throw Halfling combo, which pretty much rounded out the game. It was a wonderful game to watch tactically from the Halflings. Take out your opponent's threats, then execute perfectly on your own game plan. That being said, it really wasn't one for your average fan, who has the tactical knowledge of a chicken sandwich. Either way, well played to Coach Apples. I do not believe the sheer amount of touchdowns we've had this week, and this game is no different. This is a matchup between two of the teams down the bottom of the table for this round robin. The Goblins are looking forward to their first win, and the Nurgle looking forward to their second. Both coaches must be confident. The Nurgle team are infamous for rotting away, and getting kills always excites the Goblins, whereas said Goblins do have a tendency to lose matches, which will excite Coach Keith. The match didn't exactly get off to a roaring start. A perfect defence scuppered the Nurgle offence, although the Bombardier was still KO'd, but let's be honest, when isn't he? If another player doesn't do it, one of his own bombs will. A messy period of play following meant that the ball stayed put in the Nurgle half, but more importantly, Ni Kappa was taken out of the game with an injury, and he'll miss the next one too. That'll be a relief for whoever faces the Goblin next, I should think. It's never fun to face his chainsaw. The Goblins wouldn't take that sitting down, though. A phenomenal punch from Don't Eat the Gobbos, the newest troll, instantly killed Nurgle team captain Othol. He wouldn't regenerate from such a fierce blow either. The Goblins doing Naffle's work in getting rid of those putrid things off of the pitch and off of my videotapes. Don't worry, folks. I've had guards watch over them this time. I'll be fine. Predictably for the Goblins, though, they were too busy celebrating the death of their most recent victim, when they forgot they were playing Blood Bowl. During the chorus of whoops and hollers from the Goblins, Ridar, a Pestigore, snuck down the pitch with the ball for the first touchdown of the match. Coach Keese will need to come up with a convincing victory this game to make up for the loss of his captain. And now, we reach the most profitable time in any game for any referee. A goblin match at first touchdown. Money flowed into the ref's pockets to stop him from sending off the fanatic, but alas, the Nurgle team were taking notes from earlier, and their own perfect defense stopped the spinny boy from clobbering anyone over the head with that thing. There wasn't enough time for the battered goblin team to get a touchdown before the end of the half, but they'd at least receive the ball next half. That is, if any of them were left standing. The Nurgle team had slowly been picking them off, one by one. The Gobbos themselves were doing a good job too, failing dodges left and right. Perhaps they were all faking injury, in order to get to the off-pitch celebrations quicker. None of them seemed that serious. By kick-off, there were only actually 4 left around, and although they managed to pick up the ball, this wasn't anything a full-speed horned block couldn't take care of. With the goblins thin on the ground, the Trows didn't have anyone to tell them what to do, so they spent the better part of the rest of the game scratching their heads. The Nurgle team were valiantly trying to get revenge for their fallen captain by injuring the troll, but his hammer held firm, and so the Nurgle team had to be content with just running down the pitch, grabbing the ball, scoring, kicking off, and then doing it all again 3 times for an emphatic 4-0 victory. This means that, with the MVP vote from the fans, there's 3 skill-ups for the Nurgle team. They'll love that, since they received training so well, so it's a mixed bag of emotions for them. They'd have loved to have not lost their captain, but at least they made the rest of the game worth it for their coach. There's never a dull moment in the opening stages of a match in this tournament, and this match was no different. Picking up the ball that had been kicked quite deep into his half, Mudflayer tried to sprint back up to rejoin with his advancing team, but he slipped up on the freshly cut grass. Anyone who's played a moment versus Kislev knows what that means. An excellent hop from Crazy Frog over a mummy, no small feat considering how tall they are, gave him a free shot at the ball, which he duly nabbed for himself. This only made him a target for the mummy he'd just leapt over, though, leading him to get dispossessed pretty much immediately. Fortunately for Coach Ditka, the ball dropped in a favourable spot away from the mummy that meant that Lord Croak could swoop in and nab it, passing it off to Totally Awesome, just 1 step away from the touchdown zone. Once again, though, this just made him a target. Mudflayer rushed in to redeem himself by snatching the ball away and knocking down the scoring threat in the process. That's what he thought, though, as the Kislevite only instantly hopped back up, taking down Mudflayer and opening Lord Croak up to easily hop away from the mummy once more and nab the first touchdown of the match. My goodness, that was a roller coaster. Every move it seemed the undead were in trouble, and then it looked like they'd stabilised, and then they were in trouble again, and then they were fine again. If this whole match is going to be more exciting than that, I might need a cup of tea before it's over. Coach Ditka wasn't interested in lowering the pace either. Another wonderful kick put the ball right in the back of the field once more, and his players sprinted towards it, streaming down both sides of the field after some unsuccessful blocks from the undead handed them the advantage. It's supremely difficult to convey through highlights just how much pressure these Kislevites put coaches under. It's an unenviable position. The pressure seemed to be getting to the undead players as well. Mudflayer was forced to make a very long run down the pitch, to attempt in vain to get the ball once more, and once again slipped on the grass. This means it was no big deal for the Kislev to move in some boys to screen, then grab a second touchdown, all within the first half, and it wasn't even their kick-off. There was no respite for the undead. Mudflayer finally got the ball near his line, but then instantly Croak runs, jumps, runs, guards, then totally sprints, blocks, sprints, strips the ball from his hands. It's just one thing after another. The tempo is insane. The rest of the undead are knocking down linemen left and right, but it doesn't matter. Mudflayer picks up the ball, boom, diving tackle, then screen, run, pick up the ball, dodge, leap, run more. Their reign of terror is finally stopped, just before half-time, by a heroic play from Edmund, a skeleton, that stops a frankly embarrassing 3-0 scoreline. Perhaps with some time to catch their breath, and the player advantage, the skeletons will be able to come back in the second half. The second half did look to start off better. They pressure Lord Croak to one side of the pitch with good economical blocks, and look to be ready to knock him down, until he comes up with a clutch dodge away from a mummy to run it down the field. Trying to replicate the hero play, another mummy goes for the block, but, well, let's say they're not known for their agility. Lord Croak will take it, though, running the rest of the field to get yet another touchdown. This match looks past the undead at this point. Especially since we're now back in the Kislev comfort zone, pressuring the backfield. Despite a cage, Croak runs, leaps, guards. Oscar runs, distracts, totally sprints, leaps, blocks, strips the ball. A moment of reprieve as Mudflare's team comes to assist. Newt runs, distracts Jim, jumps up, sprints, assists. Anthony jumps up, dodges, runs, leaps, punches, then Jim catches. How do you even play against this? Jim dodges, runs, hands off. Croak catches, leaps, sprints, scores for his third and fourth and final touchdown of the game, which finally marks the end of the match. And if I don't get a cup of tea soon, it might mark the end of all Ralphie, oh dear. That was the Radical Roundup for Week 5 of the Season 1 Earth Cup, folks. I do hope you enjoyed what a topsy-turvy, unusual week this has been as much as I have, and tune in to next week's extreme insights with similar gusto. Ralph out.